Welcome, it's the Pitch Doctor here. I'm going to give you some advice on assessing pitches. First, let me remind you of the pitching research framework. It provides a simple communication tool. We are pitching a research idea to an expert in the field. In this way, it should be structured, simple, methodical, clear and focused. And when we assess pitches, we should have this in the back of our minds. On this slide, I remind you of the basic skeleton tool. We have working title, basic research question, key papers, motivation and puzzle. Then we have idea, data, tools. Then we have what's new, so what. Then follows contribution, and finally, other considerations. For a further refresher, I recommend that you visit the YouTube video, the 9-minute animation, a primer on pitching research. The address is shown on this slide. The main use of the pitch is one where, in a private setting, you use it as a communication tool, and in that instance, one would not really want to assess a pitch. You are viewing this video because you are in a situation where you in fact do want to assess the pitch. And this presents a challenge. How can we do this? I suggest that you think of this task in terms of 5 dimensions: clarity, meaningfulness, effort, connectivity, conversation. Clarity. Does the pitch have clarity? Meaningfulness. Is the pitch meaningful? For example, does it involve appropriate technical content? Effort. Does the pitch reflect a bona fide effort? Connectivity. Is the pitch well connected? And finally, conversation. Does the pitch start a conversation? In particular, a conversation to an academic expert in the field. To keep things simple for our assessment task, let's assign a score out of 10 for each of the 5 dimensions. The slide that you are now looking at provides a way of thinking of how you might arrive at that score out of 10. A score of 1 essentially is one where the effort is in some sense pathetic. A score of 2, extremely weak. A score of 3, very weak. A score of 4, weak. A score of 5, average. A score of 6, above average. A score of 7, strong. 8, very strong. 9, extremely strong. And 10, the very best that you could ever possibly imagine a novice researcher producing. Let's dig a bit deeper. First, think of clarity. Does the pitch have clarity? On this slide, I characterize a situation in which we have a very weak to even a pathetic clarity in the pitch. What might we expect to see? In terms of language, the language used will be impenetrable. It could either be an extremely terse pitch or an extremely wordy pitch. It could have a very long working title with many moving parts. In terms of data or the sample size, it might not be addressed. As far as the key papers, there may be many more than just the recommended 3. The research question may involve many multifaceted and confusing questions, and the research question for the given discipline may seem quite random. In contrast, for clarity, what might we expect to see for a very strong or even an extremely strong pitch? The language used is very or even extremely well chosen. There is neither over or underuse of words. In terms of the working title, it's crisp and accurately portrays the pitch. As far as the key papers, there are 3, and these seem highly relevant, they're recent, and they're of high quality. And finally, in terms of viability and feasibility, this is clearly shown via explicit and a credible statement on the data and sample size. Let's move our attention to the second dimension, whether the pitch is meaningful. What would characterize a very weak or pathetic pitch? First, we would see key papers that are very old, greater than 5 years or even older. The key papers might also be authored by unknown academics, basically not leaders in the field. And the key papers may come from journals that are not recognized as Tier 1 in the field. As far as motivation, this might look simply as if it's a trivial gap spotting exercise. No hypotheses or predictions when there should be one would also characterize a weak or very weak pitch. There might be inclusion of ideas that seem to be irrelevant for this field. The concepts cited may be incorrect and or used randomly. And finally, there might be a perception of extreme use of mimicry, that is, guessing what the content should be and based on superficial understanding by the pitcher. In terms of the second dimension, is the pitch meaningful? What might we expect to see for a very strong or extremely strong pitch? First, in terms of key papers, they are likely to be very fresh, less than 5 years old, and most probably even less than 3 years old. The key papers would be authored by gurus in the field, the leaders in the field, and those key papers would, in most cases, be from recognized Tier 1 journals in that field. The motivation in this setting would be one that is compelling around the big picture view. The hypotheses and predictions would be persuasive and clearly stated where these are appropriate. There would be a clear distinction between the novelty, the so what, and the contribution. The ideas here would be highly relevant, the concepts cited correct and well used, and the pitcher would appear to well understand the chosen area. Let's move to the third dimension. Does the pitch reflect a bona fide effort? If we are in a situation where we have a very weak to even pathetic case, we would see blank sections in the pitch template. There would be either extremely terse sections and possibly extreme repetition. We would have the feeling that there are more random thoughts. The ideas would be unlinked even within single template items. In contrast, for the effort dimension, a very strong or extremely strong pitch would show evidence of significant overall effort and care. There would be no blank sections, no extremely terse sections, no annoying repetition, no random thoughts, and no unlinked ideas, even within a single template item. Moving to the fourth dimension, connectivity, we're asking the question, is the pitch well connected? Well connected across the individual items within the pitching framework. To characterize a very weak or even pathetic effort, here are some suggestions. There would be substantial and fundamental disconnection of ideas across the template elements. They would appear disjointed, lacking in flow across the items, creating significant confusion. In terms of the idea, data, and tools as a subgroup, they would be poorly connected and disjoint. And in terms of the two key questions, what's new and so what, they would also appear to be disjointed or not jointly persuasive. In terms of the fourth dimension, connectivity, what might we say about a very strong or extremely strong pitch? It is likely to be characterized by a compelling connection of ideas across the template items. There will be highly pleasing flow across these items, creating a significant reinforcement of a coordinated, unified whole. In terms of the idea, data, tools, the building blocks of the pitch as a subgroup, they would be seamlessly connected and create a collective synergy. And finally, in terms of the two key questions, what's new and so what, these are separately powerful and in combination are highly compelling. The final and fifth dimension is conversation. Does the pitch start a conversation? Let's think about how we might characterize a very weak or even pathetic pitch in terms of this dimension. First, the information supplied gives no scope for starting a meaningful conversation. As a mentor, there is a feeling of, wow, I just don't know where to start. This is so confusing and flawed. And finally, there is too much missing or contradictory information that make a conversation pointless. In contrast, for the conversation dimension, a very strong and extremely strong pitch would have the following characteristics. The information supplied gives an extensive scope for starting a meaningful conversation. Now, as a mentor, there is a feeling of, wow, I can see how this works and where to ask questions to make comments that will advance it quickly and efficiently. And finally, there are a manageable number of issues raised that make a conversation easy, directed, and naturally